Part 1, Introduction. Hello, how are we going? This is the first video, the introduction, in a series of videos that I'm about to make about living with postpartum psychosis and also with bipolar disorder. The purpose of the videos is to talk through what it is like living with postpartum psychosis and bipolar disorder, and every person is unique. You have to bear that in mind. There isn't any medical advice in the videos. I'm not a doctor. I am a patient. This needs to come, any medical advice needs to come from a qualified psychiatrist. Okay? But the purpose of the video is to help sufferers, their families, and their carers to better understand the two illnesses and the day-to-day experiences of people living with those illnesses. Why me? Well, I've just mentioned that I'm a patient. I have suffered from both postpartum psychosis and I am a continued bipolar disorder sufferer, if we say it like that. And when I was sick and when I was recovering, I had a really good insight into my illness and what I needed to do to stay as well as possible. And I really impressed the nurses and the doctors that treated me. And they said to me on various occasions that they really wanted me to share my story. So I've finally come to the point where I'm ready to start sharing my story, and I'm really excited about sharing it with you here today. Okay, so what's the agenda of the videos? So part 1 today, introduction. Then we've got part 2, before being diagnosed. Part 3, the acute phase of being diagnosed as having postpartum psychosis. And then part 4 is I called it early recovery, but I realized it has to say early recovery from postpartum psychosis. And then afterwards, it's more becomes a focus on bipolar disorder and what it's like living with that. So then part 5 will be the first year, which is still sort of where it's a bit of a grey area. It's the two illnesses at the same time. Part 6 is talking about making a care plan. And also there's a part in that in part 6 about what might happen if you want to have a second child after having postpartum psychosis. Okay, and then part 7 is a day in the life. I think this will be really helpful for people that want to better understand what it's like living with these illnesses. And then I've got part 8, long-term prospects, about what is the future like with these illnesses. You are often dealing with the day-to-day and just trying to survive. Sometimes you're really just trying to survive one day at a time, but you need to also understand what are your prospects for the future and what decisions you need to make that will be the best decisions for you and your family, and surviving and thriving, eventually thriving, still carrying these illnesses with you. Okay, and then at the end there'll be a part 9 on common questions. If I get some feedback on these videos, I can try and make some more videos later on different topics. But yeah, we'll just see how the first 9 topics go, and then we'll see if there's room to do more stuff. Okay, so why are the videos about both postpartum psychosis and bipolar disorder? Okay, I've got a little note here. So people who have bipolar disorder have a high risk of having postpartum psychosis. But because they have a high risk, they are better monitored by the medical team during their pregnancy and are less likely to have a really severe episode, right? Those who are at the highest risk of getting postpartum psychosis are those who have had a less severe illness. It could be have less severe bipolar illness, or it could be like a less severe to depression illness. But so to have this less severe illness prior to pregnancy and have no diagnosis. So before you became pregnant, no one's ever given you a title of having a mental illness, okay? But you might actually be living with one. You might have it, but it's just not so severe, so that's why you haven't been diagnosed, okay? Then anyone who has postpartum psychosis after the pregnancy, eventually, in my experience, eventually gets diagnosed as having bipolar disorder. I don't know if it's the same in every country, but in Australia, that's pretty much what happens, okay? So that's why we're talking about the two illnesses the same, because at the beginning we talk about postpartum psychosis, then you get over the worst of that, but then there's the ongoing care of you as a bipolar patient, okay? What is postpartum psychosis? And I've mentioned at the beginning, I'm not the doctor. I'm not going to give you all the facts, okay? I'll just give you a little summary here. So what is postpartum psychosis? It's a medical emergency. That's the first thing you need to know. It's a psychiatric illness after giving birth. In some cases, it can start before the birth. It is a severe mania with psychosis symptoms, and it's a psychosis because you start to lose touch with reality, right? And so because you have lost touch with reality, you're at a very high risk of harming yourself and or your child, okay? If you want lots, there's honestly every day there's more information about postpartum psychosis online, which is fantastic. When I was unwell, the best website was this Action on Postpartum Psychosis. That's a British website, and the website is app.network.org. That's the best one, but other than that, there's so much information out there. You just go and have a look. All right, thanks so much. This is the end of the introduction. I'll see you in the next video, the video about before being diagnosed.